Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Kane. We're going to talk a little bit about the Kingdom of Kush. The Kingdom of Kush was established in about 1070 BCE, and they lasted until about 350 CE. They were a kingdom in Northeast Africa. Actually, they were just south of ancient Egypt. They were located along the Nile River in what is now the country of Sudan. The people are referred to as the Kushite people. They are remembered and known for being allies and rivals of the ancient Egyptians. And they had a lot of similarities to the ancient Egyptians, but had their own distinct culture. The geography of ancient Kush, as I said, they're located in what is now the country of Sudan, just south of Egypt. The Nile River actually runs directly through the kingdom. And if you look here, you see the Nile up in Egypt coming down through what is ancient Kush. You have the Red Sea there to the east. To the west and the south, you have desert. Through the Nile River, you have a series of cataracts, which are rapids that allowed for protection for the Kingdom of Kush. Along with the desert, it was very difficult to travel into the kingdom from the outside, which helped their survival. They were extremely rich in natural resources such as gold, copper, iron ore, stone. This led to them being a great trade partner for many people in the region and allowed for their wealth to grow. They had a lot of land actually surrounding the Nile River that was good for grazing animals such as cows. This eventually becomes a problem that we'll talk about, but for a long time they were able to raise grazing animals, which helped their survival as well. Similar to Egypt to the north, they had one pharaoh at a time. That pharaoh could be male or female. They actually had some very powerful female leaders. Their social classes were also very similar to the Egyptians, with your pharaoh being on top, religious leaders and nobles being below them, then scribes and soldiers being very high up in society. And at the bottom, you had farmers and then slaves. Within each of these social classes, though, you had a more complex breakdown, more complex hierarchy, not just within society, but within their own groups, too. It was much more complex than the Egyptian social classes. Artwork, they have very distinct and unique artwork. Up in the top right, you can see a bowl. Pottery was something that the Kush people were known for, and they would trade this pottery, this painted pottery, throughout the region. In the middle there, you see some relief sculptures, which were carved into the walls of tombs and palaces. This was much different than the Egyptians from the north, because it was much deeper and much more detailed than the hieroglyphics that the Egyptians would carve into the walls. The two sculptures on the left are very distinctive into the physical features of the Kushite people. And you have a lot of colorful paintings as well depicting everyday life. Architecturally, the Kush developed or adopted the idea of pyramids from the Egyptians to the north, but their pyramids had much steeper sides and were not as large as the Egyptian pyramids. These pyramids served as homes, palaces, tombs, temples. Along with the pyramids, they would build brick homes out of mud. They would build homes out of mud and stone. You see two images of the ruins, the temples. You have columns there on the left, the entrance to a pyramid tomb on the right. The religion of the Kushite people was very similar to the Egyptian religion as well. They were polytheistic with many gods and goddesses. There were also many non-human gods and goddesses. Amun was the chief god, but there were many lesser gods and goddesses that, based on the region of Kush that you lived in, you would celebrate. You would follow. Not everyone followed every single god and goddess, though. Frogs were also extremely important animal in the kingdom of Kush because the people would associate the frogs with rain, with water. When there was a plentiful supply of water, there were frogs that were around. When there was more water, there were more frogs, and that water was essential to survival, especially living in a region that did have desert. Um, Two very important individuals. Pa was a pharaoh, a king of the kingdom of Kush, and he conquered Egypt to the north. When he did this, he kind of brought the Egyptians and the Kush people together as one, similar cultures, and brought their kingdoms together. Queen Amiranis was responsible for defeating the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire invaded uh, Egypt and conquered Egypt, they continued to try to push south into Kush, but she led the Kushite army against Rome and defeated them at the height of their power. She signed a peace agreement which allowed the kingdom of Kush to continue to thrive just to the south of the Roman territory of Egypt. Some things that they are known for, their legacy, is the role of women within their society. Women had a great deal of freedom as compared to other civilizations, other kingdoms, other cultures throughout the region. They had warrior queens that would lead the military into battle, which was unlike other kingdoms as well. Their pottery that they would trade across the region was also something that has lasted over time. The spread and the sale of gold, copper, iron ore, and other precious metals led to great wealth of the kingdom of Kush. They also were the first to kind of start and establish the trans-Saharan trade route, which covered most of northern Africa and connected West Africa to East Africa. And as time went on, eventually there was a decline and a fall of the kingdom of Kush. Famine was one of the reasons for this. As we talked about the grazing animals at the beginning of this presentation, there was an over feeding of cows in the region, which led to deterioration of the soil. Too much eating of the grasses that were there continued the spread of the Sahara Desert further into Kush. That poor soil quality led to an inability to grow crops, which eventually led to famine. There was a decline in trade and a loss of jobs, which led to a weakened economy. This happened around the 2nd century CE, about maybe 100 or so years before the eventual fall of the kingdom of Kush. But as time went on, this weakened economy weakened their military. They didn't have enough money to spend on materials for their military. That weakened military allowed for invasion and for outside threats to come into the kingdom of Kush. The spread of Christianity also started to deplete their culture, their native culture, and that weakened the power of the kings and the religious leaders within Kush. Eventually, war with neighboring kingdoms led to the kingdom of Axum coming into and defeating the kingdom of Kush. Axum is in modern-day Ethiopia, which is another country in northeast Africa, in the Horn of Africa. So they traveled west into the kingdom of Kush and expanded their territory. I hope that you were able to learn a little bit about this kingdom, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Have a good day.